Excuse me. I got to get my coffee. I really enjoy coffee. I like the aroma, I like the taste, the flavor. And coffee is such a social thing for me as well. Not only do you enjoy a cup of coffee, it's the easiest way to extend hospitality. Come on in, would you like a cup of coffee? Would you like a hot tea? It's the kind of simple little gesture that brings people together. Let's go get a cup of coffee and talk about whatever issues you might want to have. It creates a fellowship and a sense of hospitality that everybody feels welcome. They can be included in it. Simple cup of coffee can start the day off. Here at church, we love coffee so much because we also have donuts that go with it, and everybody loves it after Mass. You can just hang out. A cup of coffee has significant impact on our social interactions. But the idea of coffee being any more than that, that's not something we normally think about. I mean, can you think of a cup of coffee as a moral act or an act of solidarity? Or drinking a cup of coffee is actually supporting, giving global support to people all over the planet? No, we don't think in those terms. This is not a moral act. It's simply hospitality. But coffee comes from somewhere, and coffee is connected to a lot of other variables. And the more you go down that line of thinking about where coffee came from, you think about farmers, you think about land, you think about supply chain, you think about global economics. Coffee is a commodity, and it's also part of a larger web in terms of how systems work. You start thinking about those systems, and this cup of coffee has a lot more significance. Here in this parish, we have in fact been thinking a lot in our care for creation about farmers, about land use, about the commodities of the earth, and the well-being of people. In fact, John Paul II on January 1st, 1990, in his address, Peace with God, the Creator, Peace with all creation, writes this: "It must be said that the proper ecological balance will not be found without directly addressing the structural forms of poverty that exist throughout the world. Rural poverty and unjust land distribution in many countries, for example, have led to subsistence farming and to the exhaustion of the soil. Once their land yields no more, many farmers move on to clear new land, thus accelerating uncontrolled deforestation. Or they settle in urban cities, the centers which lack the infrastructure to receive them. Likewise, some heavily indebted countries are destroying their natural heritage at the price of irreplaceable ecological imbalance in order to develop new products for export." He continues to say, in the face of situations, it would be wrong to assign responsibility to the poor alone for the negative environmental consequences of their actions. Rather, the poor, to whom the earth is entrusted no less than to others, must be enabled to find a way out of their poverty. This will require a courageous reform of structures, as well as new ways of relating among peoples and states. Enabled to find new ways out of their poverty, new ways of using the land, new ways of fostering a healthy well-being of people, the land, of products that are sustainable for all. We have the privilege today of having with us two of our friends from Equal Exchange, the fair trade movement, that will in fact address this and open a way for us to recognize that our cup of coffee, as wonderful and as tasty as it is also a moral act of solidarity with many. And so, without further ado, I'd like to invite Susan and Kristen to join.
Hello, everyone. It's good to be here with you today. My name is Kristen King, and my colleague Susan Sklar and I are going to be talking about Equal Exchange's alternative model of trade. And we're going to be focusing specifically on the part of it that deals with climate action. So I'd like everyone to just take a few moments and think about some of their favorite foods and beverages, maybe the food and beverages that they regularly enjoy. Maybe that's a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, a chocolate treat, or a morning banana. All of these food items and all food items have a relationship with the environment. And we are going to spend some time talking about that relationship today. And we're also going to be talking about, how when you support fair trade, you are protecting the environment, you're supporting small scale farmers, and you're working against climate change. So I'm going to start off talking a little bit about Equal Exchange. We are an alternative trading organization, and we are a democratic worker-owned cooperative. There are about 120 worker owners at Equal Exchange. We source coffee and other products from over 40 farmer cooperatives in Africa, Latin America, Asia, and the United States. And I think I mentioned most of our products in my previous comments. So we're sourcing coffee, chocolate, tea, bananas, avocados, nuts, olive oil. And Equal Exchange's mission is to build long-term trade partnerships that are economically sound and environmentally just, and foster mutually beneficial relationships between farmers and consumers. So these days, we hear a lot about fair trade. We hear that term used a lot. And Equal Exchange describes what we do by using the phrase authentic fair trade. And I want to talk a little bit about what authentic fair trade is. So first, Equal Exchange buys products directly from small scale farmers. Most of our farmers are farming plots of land that are about 12 acres or less. It can vary a little bit, but that's the number that we can think about. So you can imagine how hard it would be for a single farmer farming a 10-acre plot of land to be able to successfully get their crop to the international market. Equal Exchange works with cooperatives or groups of small-scale farmers. So when you start thinking about maybe 100 small-scale farmers coming together, and each of those farmers who are farming a 10-acre plot of land, they're working together in many ways. And by working together, they have a much larger volume of their crop, and they can successfully export the crop to the international market. Equal Exchange also guarantees an above market price and premiums. There's an organization called the Fair Trade Labeling Organization that sets fair trade minimum prices that fair trade organizations need to pay farmers. And Equal Exchange is regularly paying farmers above and beyond those fair trade minimum prices. Equal Exchange safeguards and restores the environment. Our farmers practice organic agriculture. They're growing shade-grown coffee, and they care for the soil and water. Human rights are essential to Equal Exchange's mission. There's no child labor or forced labor in our supply chains. Women are treated equally, and there's safe working conditions for everyone. So next we'll talk about the relationship between fair trade and climate action. Our fair trade farmer cooperatives help stop the deforestation practices of conventional coffee growing and agriculture. Many farmer cooperatives plant trees to replace those lost and to provide shade for coffee plants. Our farmer cooperatives use organic agricultural practices to grow coffee and other products. Additionally, fair trade provides a stable income source and capital to poor farmers, allowing them to stay on their land and farm. This removes the economic need to migrate. Additionally, some cooperatives sell carbon offsets for trees planted. We'll shift next to talking about agricultural challenges. A 2018 statistic shared that agriculture is responsible for 80% of the world's deforestation. More specifically, conventional coffee growing has contributed to 2.5 million acres of deforestation in Central America. Conventional coffee growing in agriculture uses petrochemicals for fertilizer and pesticides. Additionally, 75% of the world's poor people rely on agriculture for their livelihood, and climate change is threatening this. Poor farmers are losing the ability to farm, and this makes it difficult for farmers to support themselves and their families. A final statistic here, unfortunately, over 12 million people have fallen into poverty as a result of climate change. So we'll focus next on the importance of forests. Forests are home to 90% of land-based animals, plants, insects, and birds. Forests hold water in the soil and guard against erosion and flooding. And forests absorb 2.4 billion tons of carbon dioxide each year and store billions more. So next we'll talk about some components of climate smart agriculture. We've already been talking about how conventional agriculture, will clear forests to grow monocultures of tea and coffee in the sun. So one component of climate smart agriculture is shade-grown tea and coffee. Tea and coffee plants actually prefer shade, and this eliminates the need to clear forests. Another component of climate smart agriculture is water conservation practices. Planting companion plants near tea plants helps bind the soil, which protects against erosion and preserves moisture in the soil. Contour gardening and staggered drains also do the same, as does bamboo, which you can see in the lower right-hand picture there. Another component of climate smart agriculture is the use of organic fertilizers, consisting of compost, animal manure, and plant waste. This creates richer soil and crops that are more resistant to climate impacts, and it also sequesters carbon. And finally, there's no herbicides or other chemicals in climate smart agriculture. Farmers are pulling weeds by hand and composting them, restoring nitrogen to the soil. Organic agriculture is obviously healthier for both workers and consumers. Farmers aren't breathing in or handling toxic chemicals. There's clean water for farmers to drink, as well as for plants and wildlife. The soil is rich with living organisms and nutrients for the food that farmers grow for themselves. And organic agriculture results in pesticide-free grown products for consumers. So next I want to talk about coping with coffee leaf rust, also called La Roya. A statistic from 2014 describes how in Guatemala, 70% of the coffee crop was infected with coffee rust, and this led to a loss of 100,000 jobs. La Roya thrives in hotter and wetter weather, and it spreads to higher altitudes as climate temperature rises. Many of our cooperatives are planting rust-resistant coffee varieties.
Hi, I'm Susan. I'm going to continue. We work with a group in Honduras, and it's called COMSA. You can see the full name spelled out at the top here. And not only do they experiment with different alternative ways, more sustainable ways of growing things, but they also run a school that is attended by many, many different farmers in South America and Central America. So one of the things that they do, next slide, please, is they have a biodynamic approach to organic coffee farming. Organic material is the first building block of organic agriculture. And that consists of, those of you who are gardeners know this, manure, decomposting leaves, coffee pulp can be used as well, organic household waste. And then rather than disposing of this leftover matter, the farmers at COMSA collect it and use it on their farms. They've realized that using organic material alone does not mean they'll get the full benefits of its nutrients and power. In order to do that, something more is needed. Microorganisms are key to maximizing organic materials by converting it into rich matter like humus, which plants can use more effectively than undecomposed manure, for example. So the members learned how to cultivate these important microorganisms from their own forest and use them to make high-impact fertilizer for their farms. They use minerals, different rock meals and sands that plants need. And they collect rocks of different origins and colors and then pulverize them. And they use the meal to create mineral-rich biofertilizers, which is a kind of mineral soup. And that's also composed of living molecules of proteins, hormones, vitamins, enzymes, and microflora. Next slide, please. COMSA, this group of farmers, this co-op, builds the soil carbon sponge. And this is key to the green biosystem's ability to draw down carbon and to the water cycles that hydrate the earth. So nature's carbon drawdown system is photosynthesis, as we all learned in school. The green biosystem draws down 120 billion tons of carbon yearly. And healthy soil is the key to carbon biosequestration. Fungi and microorganisms in the soil drive stable soil carbon. Carbon and minerals provide space and water for water absorption. Another thing that's important for doing this kind of sustainable agriculture is diversifying plant crops. And this helps ensure food security. The Potong tea garden in India, who we work with, represents an effort to face climate challenges. Potong, once a conventional tea plantation, is now made up of a group of small farmers growing tea on a few acres of land apiece. And the farmers use plant diversification. And so in addition, they plant companion plants near tea plants that helps bind the soil, which protects against erosion and preserves the moisture in the soil, which cools down the planet. They use contour gardening and staggered drains. And bamboo is planted palisading down, which is something that is used quite frequently. They use their fair trade premiums to improve catchment areas by planting water, conserving plants and tree saplings, including bananas and indigenous species. And here are some of the plants that they plant. These are pictures of some of the plants that they use for companion planting. So just to summarize, there's been a lot of information here. Climate action and fair trade farming is very, very important, and it halts deforestation. It restores forests, which help the earth and work against climate change. It rebuilds the soil carbon sponge. Other benefits are growing shade-grown coffee, which protect the wildlife habitat. There's organic farming, no synthetic pesticides to harm the earth or farmers. There's a conservation of water, which is very, very key. And all of this helps to meet farmers' human needs to stay on the land, to make a living, to plan for the future. And they don't need to migrate. They can stay right there and do what they want to do. Next slide, please. What can we do to support fair trade as climate action? Well, if you purchase fair trade coffee and other fair trade products and encourage our networks, that's a very easy way that you can help. There are about 30,000 fair trade products on the market. We can educate ourselves and others about where our food comes from and use our power as a consumer. Can even go to local supermarkets and ask them to supply organic and fairly traded products. And we can really try to avoid products that exploit people and the environment. So you can ally with fair trade organizations for mutual support of common goals. And just a warning that don't just rely upon the seal that you see on packaging, because fair trade and ethical labeling is not always what it seems to be. Just like in any other area, there have been deep controversies in the fair trade movement about what products get a seal and what don't. And it's been watered down. Sometimes, just like with greenwashing, term that you probably know, we call it, fair trade washing. You have to really be careful and support brands that are going to support the principles that we just talked about. And some of these seals are still put on products that are produced by large plantations or agribusinesses. So there is a website right there for Fair World Project, where you can actually see a list of approved fair trade products that meet the authentic fair trade standards. Finally, this farmer expresses a beautiful way of saying that we should bring our values and principles as climate activists and sustainability advocates into the choices we make as consumers, in our choice to drink fair trade coffee, also in the food that we purchase and consume, the products we buy. In aligning with fair trade and other sustainability organizations, we can begin to gain ability to change the food system and misguided governmental systems in order to restore our planet. Thank you very much.
Kristen and Susan, what a wonderful presentation. Thank you so much for your time and bringing us so much content in your delivery. I tell you, I was somewhat overwhelmed as well. There's so many different factors involved in caring for the earth, the organization of co-ops, everything involved in plants and growing and crops and economics. I deeply appreciated what you gave us. I'm also, though, filled with a lot of hope, because I'm very impressed with the number of people who are involved in it, the people who help local communities organize, the people who have been able to create markets, the people who have been able to offer a perspective of the economy that serves human beings, as well as the sustainability of using the earth over and over again without depleting it. I was very impressed with the care in which everyone involved in the process of creating food and sharing it with others was involved with a holistic process. It reminds me of all the statements that Pope Benedict and Pope Francis have been making about the interconnectedness of everything. There's an ecological balance in all of life. No atom exists by itself. No molecule floats by itself. There's a relationship of atoms and molecules. Everything in creation is connected to something else. Nothing exists in and of itself, in isolation of anything else. And even Paul talks about the body has many parts. Organically, we are interconnected, period. Whether it be seeing the negative effects of a virus, for example, or the positive effects in terms of building up one part of the climate, which has a positive effect on other parts of the climate, is so important for us to think about. We here at Immaculate Conception really believe in this interconnected nature of life and our choices. As I said at the very beginning, this cup of coffee and drinking it is a moral act of solidarity. We are drinking this coffee because we believe it's connected to the well-being of others. In fact, everything we're doing in this parish is a way of connecting. We have solar panels, for example. We're 100% on solar energy. We have offsetted 440 tons of carbon. We've avoided it by going to solar. We have now offered 15,000 trees to farmers in Kenya. That has created an economic benefit of over $125,000 for local communities. We are involved in supporting the Navajo Nation in water filters to allow clean water, accessible clean water, to many people who cannot find it. We are involved in equal exchange because we want to partner with people doing good things. We can't change the world here in Immaculate Conception. We can't even make a dent in it. But we can never, ever not look at ourselves as a partner in one way or another in advancing the care of creation and advancing the care of every human being on this planet. Thank you very much, Kristen and Susan, once again, and thank you for all who support and educate for the sake of justice. Thank you.